into play. And you can also talk, one thing we didn't mention previously is the mood of some of these different pots. So if you compare even the last one with the warriors and the women versus this one, this is so poetic and quiet, and this one has a lot of action going on. I think that's good for the kids to just sort of compare the different feelings. And then I think after you finish discussing this, you should just do a mini recap of what some of the kinds of things that they've seen portrayed on the pots, and to kind of think about form and function and design as they move into creating their own piece of pottery, and to truly make it very individual to whatever they would like to make.
So I think, okay, go ahead.
When you get to the later stage and you're showing some of these really exquisite pieces, they then become art forms in themselves, and slightly less complicated pieces will be still used for canning the water and all the rest of it, but these really beautiful ones have become prized pieces.
Well, they were always functional, but I think you have a good point, is that, you're right, as they went on, they were prized as artworks in themselves. And actually, there's some indication that as the trade routes grew, and as the colonies, Greeks colonized southern Italy and even into, I think, southern France, and then of course on the coast of what is now Turkey, these pots were exported for their artistic value. And apparently the Etruscans were wild for this kind of pottery. And so when these pots were first discovered, the whole history of the scholarship of Greek pottery is really interesting. When people started digging these up in Tuscany, where the Etruscans were, originally they thought they were produced by the Etruscans. They didn't quite realize that there was a connection, and it wasn't until, I guess, the 18th and 19th century they started really realizing that these had been imported from Greece as prized possessions, obviously for aristocratic families.
So hopefully that was a brief overview. And again, we really just want to encourage the kids to look closely, to think about the kinds of things they see, what they mean, what they could tell, what we can learn about life 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, virtually by looking at these ancient, fabulous pieces. And then they can have an opportunity to create. So,
and so, like, obviously we're asking you to kind of give, school would spend a month or two on this. It's a vast, so I guess I just want you to say is that we just want you to inspire the kids and look at the images on the pots, look at the shape, look at the function, think about how they were used, how it's similar to our life today, and how it started back then. And then, and also, like, there's that book on this table, it's called Art Is, and this is in our school library, and it's amazing. It just says Art Is, and it goes through, and there's a tapestry where it says Art is a record of what happened in history, and it also says Art is a Greek pot. And so this functional object that was made 3,000 years ago is art, and it also tells us a lot about how we lived. But and it's funny because this, I'm like, part of me feels like, oh, this is so like heavy, or boring, and exciting, boring, or it's like all of it in one, because there's so much you want to say, but then how do you pare it down? How do you make it interesting? And the reason why I think we're tying in the literature as well as the art is because these stories that were told orally first, then in pictures and drawings on these pots, then they became recorded, and you start to see the writing on the pots, the signatures, the use of the alphabet emerges at this time. And then this Percy Jackson book, that Met is selling, say, come to see us and see all the characters. You can come to the Met and see the characters that inspired the author who wrote Percy Jackson here at the Met. And so then when I was talking to Mrs. Bruin, she's like, well, that's interesting. I didn't think it was these characters that inspired the author to write this book. She has a totally different story about why this author wrote this book. And it's about how his son loved all of these stories, and there are no more. They don't exist. They stopped after this time. But he's written the next, what are they? the next Greek mythology. And she said he wrote it for his son because his son has ADHD. And so the demigods, who are part human, part animal in the stories, kind of represent the ADHD child. And they do. It's just fascinating. It's just fascinating. If you get a chance to talk to the librarian, do. She is a wealth of knowledge, and she knows that all these books are in the library, and it will help you. I had to say that.
No, that's okay. So the last thing, just pick one or two facts that you really feel are important for the kids, and just engage them in discussion and try to get in those couple facts that are interesting, just so they have some piece of meat to walk away with. All right.
So I think,
Yes, I just wanted to say, there are certain things that the kids are going to find especially interesting.
Absolutely.
The octopus pot will definitely interest all ages, the warriors, as you mentioned. So as we're reading about this, we'll come across different things that might be more interesting and kind of fun for kids.
Yeah, and just listen to them. Respond.
Right.
Don't be so glued to what's on here. Or, oh my gosh, I was planning this. Just go with what they're react to what they
And don't
actually
be so
say.
glued on being the historian.
Right.
They can see it right there from looking at it. You don't have to know all the facts, but it is fascinating to have that information.
So I think what we're going to do now is Jill's going to talk about the second half of our presentation, or the presentation to the children, which is the actual project itself.
So Maury's showing you how to make the pot. What I'm going to talk about, I can find it here, is the materials you're going to use. But please excuse my voice. I sound a lot worse than I feel, so I feel fine, but sorry. So get this sheet out, and I'm just going to quickly walk you through the materials that you'll be using for making this project. So as mentioned, we're going to be making these amphora pots. For the younger grades, you may choose to do a more simple pinch pot because I don't want to say it's complex, but it does kind of need a little bit more manual dexterity to achieve this. So the materials used, so it'll be the clay, and we've ordered these in 25-pound containers. And so it's called a Mex art locker. So you all know where the art locker is. So if you go down those steps, the clay will be underneath those steps. And then the rest of the material will be in the art locker. So you'll need your big pot of clay.
I just want to say that the way it's working out, it's 25 pounds of clay.
Right, this is what I was about to say.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and each child will receive about a pound. So I know that some grades are a little smaller. There might be 23 kids. Some grades are a little larger. There might be 28 kids, but we're really talking about a fraction of difference when you're talking about a pound per kid.
So it's pre-cut already?
It is not.
Cut it with the wire?
So we are receiving the clay any day now, and determining how best to scoop it out.
Okay.
So I think it may be cut. I mean,
You're
to be
going to
honest
see the
with you, we
clay.
have
Laura's
to.
going to show you. In a
She
minute.
has the clay, but in a smaller container. We haven't yet received these large 25-pound containers, but we'll make it work.
And we'll send out just since that's not a fact,
update,
we will definitely send an update.
It was sold in 5-pound blocks, so we don't know if they're going to put 5-pound blocks in,
Right.
in
No,
the
I
box
think it's
or one massive
I
chunk.
think. Yeah.
That's how
we had to use the wire and cut it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's no way around it, really. Yeah.
Does it stick to the...
Yeah.
We'll update you.
Yeah, I think we use paper plates last
Yeah, we
time.
did.
So, Morgan, do you have your pot handy?
I have a few pots, yes.
So next on the list is the black acrylic paint, and that's for painting the pots, for making the design on the pots. And what we suggested is that while the children are making their pots, you can talk about sort of brainstorming like what they would like to put on their pots, so they can go with a motif, a geometric motif, or a leaf or something, like the wavy curly bits that Maury made here, or here's a person. We talked about scenes from every
are
day.
really hilarious.
They're wonderful.
I'm not a potter, I have to say that 100 times.
Does it need time to dry, or can you pretty much paint as soon as you're
That's
done?
the cool thing. Let me just say that I bought a lot of different kinds of this quick drying clay. and we we ended up, there's some that I use that really just collapsed in on each other. I didn't even bring those, they're just idiotic looking. But the cool thing about this is that they can form the pot and then paint right on.